Welcome to Upvoted No Sleep, where OP Lycian-Sarpedon finishes the story they began in yesterday's episode. Writing. I woke up late and rolled over to check my phone. I scrolled through a few Instagram notifications, checked the news on Reddit, and then I almost had a heart attack when I got out of bed to make my way to the bathroom. "Rise and shine," said the mannequin standing at the foot of my bed. The faces of the mannequins we found were the blank, smooth kind without detailing, but Nolan had evidently drawn a smiley face in Sharpie on this one. So I reached over to my nightstand and I angrily threw a copy of Game of Thrones at the mannequin, which hit it square in the chest and sent it toppling over backwards to the ground. "Ouchie," it said from the floor. I threw on a bathrobe and I left the room. I showered and generally went about my Sunday. And then when I returned to get dressed, the stupid mannequin was still sprawled on the floor with that stupid smile on its face. So I grabbed it by the arm and I dragged it out to the living room, where I propped it up with the other mannequins, which now also had smiley faces drawn on their blank, smooth heads. Sonny worked late that day, and Nolan and Amy were out doing something. So I had the house to myself. After I spent most of the day reading and playing some video games, I decided I would finish off the last few beers left in the case from yesterday. I grabbed one out of the fridge, took a cigarette from my pack, and stepped out onto the back deck. "Okay, enough of these things," I said, as I saw the three mannequins were stood in a circle around the fire pit in the backyard, holding empty beer cans in their hands. I set my beer down, I walked back inside, and I picked up the baseball bat I'd kept next to my bed. I walked back outside, lit my cigarette, and proceeded to knock the head of the closest mannequin clean off, the white head sailing across the backyard. "Home run," said one of the mannequins behind me, after which I immediately turned and slashed it across the torso with the bat. I laid into the mannequins, caving in the chests, knocking the heads off, and bashed the limbs apart. I picked up the remnants of the mannequins and carried them into the alley where I dropped it all next to the garage. "From garbage you came, and to garbage you shall return," I said to the mannequin parts, and flicked my cigarette onto the pile. "How did Nolan do that?" I said to myself as I walked back into the backyard. I smoked another cigarette on the deck, chugged my beer, grabbed another, and went back to my computer to play some more games. About an hour elapsed, when the nicotine started to call me again, and I went back to the deck for another cigarette. I couldn't tell if I wanted to cry, scream, run, or rage, as I stepped outside and I saw all three mannequins standing around the fire pit again. Their heads were all turned to face me, and where before they had smiley faces, all three now had frowning faces drawn on in Sharpie. The worst part was, they all had duct tape wrapped around themselves, reattaching arms, heads, patching holes, and holding them together where I'd smashed them apart. I stood in silence, blinking, pinching myself, hoping I was dreaming for a good minute. I felt afraid to even take my eyes off of these stupid things. So, staring straight at them, I put the cigarette to my lips and I lit it, puffing out the initial cloud of smoke. "Ouchie," said one of the mannequins, breaking our staring contest. I immediately strode down the stairs, yanking the garage door open and grabbing the jerry can of gasoline that I kept for my lawnmower. I went back into the yard. I snapped each of the mannequins in half. I threw them in the fire pit, doused them all in gas, and I threw my cigarette onto the pile. The entire thing went up in a great rush of smoke, and the heat flashed against me so suddenly I stumbled back from the fire pit. I angrily flipped off the burning pile, and I sat on one of our deck chairs, silently, angrily watching the fire burn. I knew on the inside that Nolan was probably watching me from somewhere in secret, laughing at my reaction to these stupid dumpster mannequins. But I didn't care. I hated them at this point, and it really didn't bother me if I looked like an idiot. Once the fire had burned itself out, all that was left were a few charred pieces that evidently weren't made of anything meltable, and a pile of molten black something. Plastic, maybe? I don't know what they make mannequins out of. So, I angrily made my way back into the house, heading for my office. I was walking by the living room when I heard it. "Hot." I stopped dead. afraid to look. I slowly turned my head, and in the darkness of the living room, I saw 3 still humanoid shapes. They were charred black, with wisps of smoke rising off them to the ceiling. I felt my legs go weak and my heart start racing. I ran back to the bedroom and I slammed the door. I threw everything on top of my dresser to the floor and I pitched the whole thing on its side against my door. I sat down on the floor of my room and I started to write this. Please, someone please just tell me how he managed to do it. I know that mannequins can't come to life. It's impossible. I know it is. How did Nolan do it? Why did he do it? Why? I kept yelling through the door, begging, pleading, just wanting to know how he did it. They're not real. I mean, it's a joke. It has to be a joke. Please, you guys are the ones who know about supernatural, creepy things. I need to know what's happening. I need to know that this is not real. I'm dreaming. I'm hallucinating. It has to be that. But I've never had a dream like this before. They're right outside the door. I know it. Because all they're saying now, over and over, is, sleepy time. Please, somebody help me. And that was an upvoted no sleep story by OP Lycian-Sarpedon. Sweet dreams.